My mom threw away my business card saying, "You're wasting your time, you'll never succeed anyway." I said nothing. 6 months later, she was crying at my company launch. I remember the exact moment the first crack formed. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had just picked up my first set of business cards, a simple design, nothing flashy. Black lettering, white matte finish, clean and professional. They weren't just cards to me. They were a promise. Proof that, for once in my life, I was daring to believe in myself. I walked through the front door of my childhood home feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe, just maybe, I thought they'd be proud of me this time. Maybe they'd finally see me as more than the dreamer they pitted behind tight smiles. I left the box on the kitchen counter while I went to grab a drink. When I came back, she was standing there, my mother Karen, in her crisp blue cardigan, flipping through the cards with an expression that made my stomach twist. "Waste of time," she muttered, her mouth curling into a sneer. Before I could say anything, she tossed the box into the trash. The whole thing. Cards and all. Like it was nothing. "You're wasting your time," she said louder now. "You'll never succeed anyway." She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't have to. Those words hit harder than any slap could have. All the air rushed out of me, and I just stood there, hands numb, throat burning. I wanted to shout. I wanted to grab the cards out of the garbage and wave them in her face, to beg her to believe in me, just once. But I said nothing. Something in me broke quietly, the way glass fractures when you pour boiling water over it. You don't see the shatter until it's too late. And that was the last day I ever asked for her approval. The house felt colder after that. I stayed for dinner that night, picking at my food while my mother chattered on about someone else's son, Evan the doctor, Daniel the lawyer, every name a reminder of what I wasn't. I smiled when appropriate, nodded when expected, and felt nothing at all. Later, when I went to take out the trash, I saw them again. My business cards. Still sitting there at the top of the bin, untouched, smeared with some of the spaghetti sauce from dinner. I don't know why, but I reached into the garbage and pulled one out. I wiped it against my jeans until only a faint stain remained. I held it in my hand like it was something fragile, something dying. That tiny, crumpled card wasn't just paper. It was everything I had fought for, the late night studying, the fear I had swallowed every time I thought about failing, the savings account I had drained just to file the paperwork. All of it, thrown away with a flick of her hand. I looked back at the house through the kitchen window. My mother was laughing at some rerun on TV, a glass of wine in her hand, relaxed and happy. Like she hadn't just crushed the only thing I had ever dared to be proud of. That's when I realized, it wasn't that she didn't understand what I was doing. She did. She just didn't want me to succeed. Not if it meant doing something she hadn't chosen for me. It wasn't disappointment. It was sabotage. And I was finally done pretending otherwise. I didn't say a word that night. Not when she laughed with my father in the living room. Not when she kissed me on the cheek absent-mindedly as I left. I drove home in silence, the business card still clutched between my fingers like some bruised relic. In the parking lot of my tiny apartment complex, I sat behind the steering wheel for a long time, engine off, watching the windows frost up around me. "You'll never succeed anyway." The words echoed in the small, suffocating space, louder than any shout could have been. I thought about everything I had sacrificed to get here. The friends I'd drifted away from because they didn't understand why I worked nights and weekends. The relationships that crumbled because I didn't fit into their neat plans of stability. The chances I passed up because I couldn't afford to lose focus. All for this dream that now sat, battered and stained, on the passenger seat. It would have been so easy to turn back that night. To say, "She's right." To put the dream away, call it foolish, blame it on being naive. A part of me wanted to. The tired part. The lonely part. But then something inside me, something small and stubborn and furious, snapped awake. I realized I had spent my whole life waiting for her to clap for me. Waiting for her to be proud. waiting for her to say, "You're good enough." And the truth hit me harder than anything she had ever said. She was never going to say it. No matter how hard I worked. No matter what I achieved. She didn't want to see me rise. She needed me small. She needed me to need her. And that night, sitting in my frozen car, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I would stop building for her. I would build in spite of her. I picked up the crumpled card, smoothed it out against my knee, and whispered into the empty car. "You're wrong." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened my laptop and started rebuilding, brick by digital brick, everything I had dreamed of. No applause. No encouragement. No safety net. Just me, my ambition, and the echo of her doubt fueling every keystroke. The first few weeks were brutal. I poured every spare minute into the business, not glamorous minutes, not the ones you see in some movie montage with upbeat music and victorious smiles. These minutes were ugly, heavy, lonely. I woke up before dawn, worked my 9-to-5 job like a ghost, then came home to grind until my eyes stung from staring at spreadsheets and empty order forms. Some nights, I fell asleep with my laptop still open, the glow from the screen burning the outline of unfulfilled dreams into the back of my eyelids. There were no congratulations. No one checking in to ask how I was doing. The phone stayed silent, except for the occasional group text from my family, usually some update about my cousin's engagement, or my brother's promotion. Nothing about me. Nothing ever about me. I started bleeding parts of my life away. First, it was sleep. Then, friends stopped calling. You can only say, "Sorry, I'm working," so many times before people stop inviting you. Then the few dates I managed to set up fizzled out. No one wants to date a man whose passion leaves no room for dinners or weekends away. I remember one night clearly, probably because it almost broke me. I had just finished a marathon session fixing a last-minute disaster with a supplier. It was 3:12 a.m. My tiny apartment smelled like burnt coffee and failure. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling fan spinning uselessly, and for the first time in a long while, the thought whispered in my head. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really was wasting my time. Maybe I was destined to always be the one in the background, clapping for someone else. I buried my face in my hands and sat there, breathing in the thick, stale air. But then, out of habit, my eyes drifted to the corner of my desk, to the single, stained business card I had taped to the wall above my laptop. Still here. Still standing. Still fighting. I didn't pick myself up because I was strong. I picked myself up because I was angry. Not at the world. Not even at her. At the idea that she could still be right about me. That night I made a vow. If I was going to fail, I was going to fail screaming. I was going to fail giving every last drop of blood and breath and belief I had. But if I succeeded, I would do it without her. Without needing her approval. Without her even being able to claim a single piece of it. If there's a hell designed for the living, it looks a lot like chasing a dream no one believes in. Those 6 months were a kind of war. Every day, the battlefield reset, and every day, I had to drag myself across it again. There were mornings when I woke up to a new problem, a delayed shipment, a sudden bill I hadn't planned for, a website glitch that tanked my pre-orders overnight. Each disaster chipped at me, but I kept moving, kept bleeding time and energy and money into a future that felt more imaginary than real. I learned to live on 4 hours of sleep and a diet of cheap black coffee and dollar store ramen. I learned how to smile through networking events where no one remembered my name 5 minutes after shaking my hand. I learned how to swallow every instinct that wanted to scream. Notice me. Please, just notice me. Because no one was coming to save me. Not a single person. There was a day, maybe around month 4, where it almost ended. The account dipped into the negative. I was sitting in my car, parked outside a rundown laundromat because I couldn't afford to fix the broken machine in my building. My phone buzzed with another rejection email, This one from a supplier I had pinned all my hopes on. It felt like the universe had its boot on my throat, daring me to say the words. I quit. I stared at my reflection in the windshield. I barely recognized myself anymore, unshaven, hollow-eyed, clothes wrinkled and hanging loose from the weight I'd lost. A part of me whispered, "You don't have to keep doing this. No one would blame you. You've suffered enough." I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel. And for a minute, a long, dangerous minute, I considered it. But then, somehow, my hand drifted to the glove box. And tucked inside, worn and creased from the months of moving it back and forth, was the last surviving business card. I pulled it out, running my thumb over the faded ink. "You'll never succeed anyway." The memory of her voice lit a fire in my chest so hot it felt like breathing smoke. I wasn't chasing her applause anymore. I was chasing the look she would have when she realized she had been wrong. Dead wrong. And that was enough. That night I didn't go home. I drove straight to a 24-hour diner, ordered the cheapest coffee they had, and spent 6 straight hours rebuilding my launch plan from scratch. No safety net. No backup plan. Just me versus the doubt. And by the time the sun crawled over the edge of the horizon, painting the world gold again, I had a new plan, sharper, leaner, meaner. A plan that didn't just hope to succeed. It planned to dominate. 6 months later, it was launch day. And she was about to see exactly what she tried to kill. The morning of the launch felt unreal. I stood in front of the rented ballroom mirror, navy suit, black tie, company logo pinned to my lapel, and stared at my own reflection like it belonged to someone else. Someone sharper. Someone harder. Someone who didn't need to be loved to keep breathing. Months of suffering had carved me into someone new. The room outside was buzzing. Rows of chairs filled with investors, local business owners, old college friends I hadn't seen in years. There were cameras too, local news outlets covering the event, maybe even a few industry blogs. I saw them setting up through the crack in the door. And right there, off to the side in the 3rd row, sat my mother, Karen. She wore her nicest dress. Her hair was curled the way she always did when she wanted to look important. Her smile was tight, brittle at the edges. But her eyes were restless. Scanning the crowd. Looking for someone who might notice her. Looking for a place in something she thought she could control. It almost made me laugh. Almost. I had invited her. Not out of love. Out of design. I wanted her to sit there. To watch what she tried to bury bloom into something unstoppable. I stepped onto the stage when they called my name, the room erupting into polite applause. Not fake applause. Not the applause you get because someone has to. The kind that meant they saw me. Maybe for the first time in my life, the world saw me. The speech I had prepared was simple. Short. I cleared my throat, looking out over the crowd. 6 months ago, I started building something that most people told me was impossible. I said, letting my voice steady itself against the silence. They said I was wasting my time. That I would never succeed. I paused, just long enough for the weight of the words to sink in. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. The people who mattered would know. Sometimes, I continued, my voice harder now. The people who are supposed to believe in you are the first to bet against you. Sometimes the closest voices are the ones trying hardest to keep you small. Not because they see your limits, but because they fear what you might become without them. I let the silence stretch, let it fill every corner of the room. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, saw her stiffen, saw the way her hand trembled on the strap of her purse. Today, I said, we're not here because it was easy. We're here because I decided their doubts weren't bigger than my belief. The room burst into applause. Real, raw, earned applause. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't for surviving. It was for winning. The moment I stepped off the stage, she was there. Pushing past people she barely knew, her heels clicking too fast against the polished floor, her eyes wide, not with pride, Not with joy. With desperation. "Matthew," she said, her voice trembling as she reached for my arm. For a second, for the briefest second, that old instinct rose up inside me, the boy who wanted his mother to see him. To hug him. To say she was proud. But that boy was gone. Buried under every silent dinner, every dismissive laugh, every crumpled business card. I stepped back, just enough that her hand caught empty air. She faltered, blinking. And for the first time, I saw her clearly, not the woman I had spent my whole life chasing, but just a person. Small. Fragile. Fallible. "Matthew, listen," she started, her voice cracking. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't think." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't want to think," I said quietly. "You didn't want me to be more than what you decided I could be." Tears welled up in her eyes, thick and fast, but I didn't move to comfort her. Not this time. "You were supposed to protect me," I said, keeping my voice low. "You were supposed to believe in me even when no one else did. That's what parents do." "Please," she whispered. "Can we just start over?" The question hung between us, heavy and useless. I could have said yes. I could have let her cry into my suit jacket, and pretend that this moment was enough to erase everything. But it wasn't. And it never would be. I straightened my tie, feeling the calm settle over me like a second skin. "I'm grateful," I said. Her face lit up for half a heartbeat. "I'm grateful," I repeated, "because you taught me the most important lesson of my life." I leaned in closer, my voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "Sometimes family isn't who stands beside you. It's who you leave behind." Her mouth opened in a silent gasp. But I was already turning away. I walked back into the crowd, into the future that had no room for her. No backward glances. No second chances. No more waiting for love that was never coming. And as the applause swelled again for the next speaker, I slipped the last business card from my pocket, the one I'd kept all these months, and tucked it into a planter near the stage. A gravestone for the life I had finally left behind. The days after the launch felt like walking out of a long, dark tunnel into blinding sunlight. Everything looked the same apartment, the same city streets, the same cheap coffee shops, but I wasn't the same. Not anymore. I thought there would be a part of me that missed her. That wondered if I had made the right choice. That wrestled with the idea of reaching out, of patching things over with a polite conversation and a forced holiday dinner. But the silence that followed was peaceful. Not hollow. Not lonely. Just clean. She tried calling once. Twice. 3 times. I never answered. Each missed call was like another stone laid in the foundation of my future, a wall between the man I was and the boy she wanted me to stay. About a week later, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting immediately. Tight, controlled cursive, like she thought if she pressed hard enough, she could force me to come back. Inside was a letter. A short one. "I'm proud of you," it said. "I just didn't know how to show it before. Can we talk?" I stood there for a long time, reading the words over and over. Feeling nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. You don't owe someone a second chance just because they finally realized they were wrong. I folded the letter carefully and dropped it into the trash, right on top of a pile of old pizza flyers and junk mail. It belonged there, with all the other things that didn't matter anymore. The weeks turned into months. My company, the one no one believed in, started to grow. Not overnight. Not in some dazzling, overnight success kind of way. It was slow, gritty, and real. The kind of growth that sticks because it's earned, not given. New clients came in, not because of flashy ads or desperate sales pitches, but because of the work. Word spread. Trust built. Bit by bit, brick by brick, the life I had dreamed of began to take shape. There were moments I wished I could have shared it with someone. When I signed my first major contract. When I got the keys to my first real office, a tiny space downtown that smelled like new paint and fresh starts. When I sat alone at my desk one evening, the city lights glowing outside, and realized I made it. And not once, did I reach for my phone to call her. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to punish her. But because I had finally learned. Some victories aren't meant to be shared with the people who doubted you. Some victories are private, personal, sacred. I surrounded myself with people who saw me, really saw me, not as a cautionary tale, not as a disappointment, but as someone worth believing in. Friends who celebrated the messy middle, not just the polished ending. Mentors who didn't need me to be anything more than who I was. Family, I realized, isn't always blood. It's who shows up for you when the world turns cold. It's who cheers for you when no one's watching. And the family I chose, the one I built for myself, made the victory sweeter than any hollow applause I could have chased. Some nights, I still find myself staring out at the city skyline, wondering how it all could have been different. If she had believed. If she had just tried. But then I remember. If she had believed in me, I might have stayed small. I might have kept waiting for someone else's permission to live a life worth living. In a strange way, her rejection wasn't the curse I thought it was. It was the beginning of everything.